Frank, if I was going to put another major leaguer in there after, well, I don't have a major leaguer in there yet. Not one. Who's the first major leaguer that would go into a all-sports Hall of Fame? Who would represent baseball if there was only one baseball player in a Hall of Fame?
Well, I guess Babe Ruth. He was kind of always the first name I heard growing up, and for so long he really dominated all of history. And then I guess if you get to the next era, you could go Mickey Mantle, perhaps. But yeah, I think I'd probably start with Babe Ruth.
All right, Babe Ruth has been nominated. He is under heavy consideration right now, and I'm surprised. I just looked over. No baseball players in here. You know who is in there? Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, he used to play for the Chicago White Sox, right?
I mean, I said the other night to Josh, I said to Frank, hey, the Jordan documentary, based off the Jordan documentary, what would be the Major League Baseball story you would want, uncovered? And you said, I'm not familiar with the Jordan documentary. How is that possible?
Hey, I'm living a very crazy life right now. I'm teaching a bunch of classes. I have to do them all online. I've been trying to hire somebody at my day job. And of course, you can't meet with anybody. And I have a 3-year-old daughter at home, and my wife is also working. So I've watched plenty of True and the Rainbow Kingdom on Netflix, but I have not watched Michael Jordan documentary.
Well, this thing was being promoted for months and months. It was supposed to start in June during the NBA Finals, but because of this, the public pressure was so great that ESPN moved it up to April so that we had something live-esque sports-oriented, and the hype has just been ridiculous over the last 2 weeks when they announced they were going to move this thing up, to the fact that 6.3 million people watched it on it's Sunday night at 9 o'clock, man. What else are you doing?
It's a great question. But yeah, I would say that I will get to watch this soon. I just got to get through these last couple of weeks of the semester for my teaching jobs first, because right now this is not easy on any teacher. I will just say, it's one thing if you, and I'm somebody who's taught courses online in the past. I've always had the summer to prepare. I've always had the winter to prepare. Well, all of a sudden it was like snap of the fingers. You have to teach online, and it's very new to a lot of people. And so it's been consuming my time. But I will get to watch that very, very soon, because there's still an end of the semester coming up shortly.
Yeah, you got plenty of time to watch it. It's 2 episodes every Sunday night. They're 2 hours long, so you got to sit down and carve some time out for this thing. So I'll ask you, Frank. So the premise of this Last Dance is, in the final season of the Bulls, they had this unprecedented access to the team because of the fact that Jerry Krause, the GM, essentially said, look, I don't care if you go 82-0. We're breaking this team up. This is it. So they let the cameras in, and they basically chronicled the whole season. And now, here we are, 2020, all this footage is coming out from this last season of the Bulls dynasty. And a lot of it's on Michael Jordan, but it's called The Last Dance. So if you were to have unprecedented access on a baseball team, current, past, future, whatever, is there a story that you want the inside story out in a 10-episode miniseries?
Well, the most recent example I came up with thinking about the Phillies, since, of course, that's what I spend my time doing, was the 2011 team. I thought that the 2011 team was perhaps the most talented one that they've had in this entire run that the Phillies went through from the mid-2000s to the mid-2010s. And, of course, that really was their last dance in the playoffs. And, I'd really like to see just how, with all the hype with the 4 aces, and, we saw a lot of that at the beginning of the season, a lot of the press conferences and the attention to the 4 aces. But really that team, and the fact that they got eliminated in the NLDS, really underachieved. And really that was their last shot. After that, it wasn't that they disassembled the team, perhaps like the Chicago Bulls were going to do, but that was the last year of health for a lot of those big time players, and that was the end. And not the same thing. You didn't know that they were going to break up the team like that, but that might have been an interesting thing to see, and see too how, when they ultimately failed to advance in the playoffs, what that meant for this Phillies team.
I think, it's a good one because it's similar to the Bulls thing, except for the Bulls, they won three-peat and then took the break when Jordan went to play baseball and then won another three-peat. And this was kind of like, the final, the last dance, if you will, of that. And this was, if you would have known the Phillies had been to the playoffs in 2007, won the World Series in 2008, went back to the World Series in 2009, got knocked out in the division round, got knocked out, in the following year to the Giants and then the Cardinals, then, yeah, it would have been pretty cool. I thought, for me, the 93 Phillies team, if you would have known ahead of time, all the craziness of that team, to have that season be documented with cameras behind the scenes, I think that would be a pretty cool story to come out as well.
And by the way, Jeff Mosher last night, we were texting, and he was saying that Lenny Dykstra would be a great story to tell in the middle of that 1993 Phillies team. And certainly we know a lot of the stories that have come out about Lenny Dykstra during that season and other seasons, and it seems like that would be a good lens from which to view that 1993 season.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's so many stories there. I mean, I think that's an easy one. And if you were to pick a non-Phillies oriented team, I think they said there's a 30 for 30 coming out on the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire chase of 98. I think that's one that they said they're working on. That would be an interesting story. I also think another behind-the-scenes story that would have been pretty cool to kind of like document the whole, chronicle kind of the whole season would be this most recent thing with the Astros. I mean, if you had all the inside juice on that, that would be unbelievable.
Yeah, the 2017 Astros, that would certainly be a good one. And even if you remember that John Boy, who certainly has made a name for himself in the media, who broke down a lot of that camera footage and happened to catch the monitor outside the dugout in one of the World Series videos that were released. That kind of gives you the idea that there's probably some footage that got captured along the way that we just haven't seen yet with that 2017 Astros team. So there's probably more going on. And by the way, we're still waiting on that Red Sox investigation. You think that they could at least throw us a resolution to that investigation while we are baseballless?
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com. There was a blurb on that yesterday that was still ongoing, I think I saw. But I want to get your opinion on this. Major League Baseball, Jeff Passan, saying that multiple owners have said that the cost of playing games with players being paid prorated salaries would be higher than the cost of not playing games. This could lead to a rabbit hole of the has versus the have-nots wanting to play versus the teams that don't think they can win not wanting to play.
Yeah, if you think about it, if a team averages, I'm just going to give a lower number, 2 million fans in a season, and each average ticket is $50 a seat. I mean, think about that math for a second. How much revenue is going to be lost simply from fans not being in the stands for these games? And that is substantial. And as much as some teams could probably weather it, I mean, the Phillies, they, of course, signed that $1.5 billion TV contract, which on average would be $1.5 billion a season, and way more than a team's payroll, of course. 150 million, I'm sorry, which is right around the team payroll. But think about like the Pittsburgh Pirates, think about the Kansas City Royals, think about even the Milwaukee Brewers. There's some teams that are just, they need that money. Like their TV contracts are not going to pay the salaries of the players even close. And so I think what's happening now, what you're seeing now, is that the MLB Players Association, they're kind of taking the position, and Tony Clark, the former Detroit Tigers first baseman who now is the president of the association, he says that, the players are going to get their prorated salaries. And MLB said, we can't do that. If there's not fans in the seats, then we can't pay that much. So that seems to be a little standoff behind the scenes as well. So I think that's very true, that if you play a season and you're deficit spending, if you're playing the salaries, then you're better off almost not paying any salaries. Think about average businesses right now. If you're shut down and you're paying your employees and your revenue's not coming in because you don't have your customers, I mean, then you're deficit spending every month, and a lot of businesses can't handle that. And even though it's a much greater scale than we might experience in our day-to-day lives, same principles of business apply. You just can't spend all that money with nothing coming in because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, Frank Klose with us, 97.3 ESPN.com. What about the latest blueprint out there that they added Texas to the mix? I mean, Dr. Fauci has come out today, and, he was on a television station in New York last night essentially saying that he thinks baseball will play. It's unlikely to see fans back, and if they do have fans, the setup would be with masks in the stands and gloves, and you'd be probably sitting 3 seats apart. But he does kind of give the green light to these bubble cities. So you got the Arizona one, you got the Florida-Arizona one, and now a third one where Texas is added.
Yeah, the Texas one really surprises me because you have 2 stadiums there. You have Globe Life Park, which is set to open for the Texas Rangers. Then you have Minute Maid Field in Houston. And they're not up the road from each other by any means. You're talking about 2 stadiums that are 4 hours away. So what you're essentially going to have to do, and I'm trying to figure out how they're going to make a league work. So the Grapefruit League, Cactus League split essentially meant teams are going to set up at their spring training sites. But then how do you break it up here? Now, I guess the Rangers and the Astros might play there because, well, they're from there. But who else is going to be forced to go bunkered down in Texas? Like, are you talking about a 10-team sort of league with 2 divisions? Or are you talking then what happens if you have 3 divisions? Like, can you actually come up with a World Series like that? Or are they just simply going to play games and count them towards their original division? I think there's a lot of logistics that are going to have to work out here. At least with the Florida and Arizona split, you have 2 leagues and you can create some divisions. I just don't know who's going to all of a sudden be told, all right, you have to go to Texas, period. Which of the Florida teams are going to have to do that? I mean, it sounds like that, at least from what I read from the CBS Sports Report last night, that Marlins Stadium was not really one of the stadiums they were focusing on. So maybe the Phillies, being that they are near St. Petersburg, would sort of be based in that St. Petersburg area. Maybe they're going to send some of those East Coast Florida teams to Texas. I mean, if you're not going to use Miami Marlins Stadium to play some games on a regular basis, well, then somebody's got to go to Texas. So what are you just going to say to, say, St. Louis Cardinals, okay, you're just going to Texas? New York Mets, you're going to Texas. I think that might be even worse with the players than we saw with either the Arizona League, or I didn't hear so much pushback from the players about the Florida-Arizona split, but I just can't imagine being told to go to Texas.
Yeah, the Florida-Arizona split essentially sounds as if at least the Florida Grapefruit League and the Arizona Cactus League, at least it splits them up into 2 definitive, like, okay, half the teams are in Florida for spring training, you guys go there, and it lets you play in-home kind of spring training areas. And the Arizona one, I guess you could do a National League, American League kind of setup and do it over there. Adding a third city to the mix, I think, complicates things a little bit, but I don't know. I'm assuming there are people that are smarter than us too coming up with these ideas, but you never can tell in this world anymore.
But really, like, if you're going to have a Texas league, so to speak, like, how do you? It's one thing if you're just going back and forth between the 2 sites, between Arlington, Texas, which is between Dallas and Fort Worth, basically, and Houston. But are you going to start flying teams on chartered planes? Like, it seems like the benefit of going Texas, Florida was that you didn't need. I mean, going Arizona and Florida is that you didn't need any air travel. That you were within pretty distance of the team. I mean, they're going to have to fly teams in and out of Texas, right? I mean, I just don't know if that's beneficial. But again, if you can feel comfortable that you can charter planes and that everybody getting onto the plane, because those planes, you have all the recirculated air that seems to be a problem. So maybe they can charter. They feel confident they can charter a plane, and knowing that nobody who gets on is a positive case, then I suppose they could fly. Well, then that begs the question: well, why not just play in your home ballparks anyway?
Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, at Frank Klose with a K, host of the Powder Blue podcast as well. The guys are still talking baseball. We're doing it the same. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Frank, thanks, man. Make sure you watch the Jordan doc, man. Do yourself a favor.
If my daughter goes to bed at a decent hour, I surely will.
Well, 9 o'clock she should be in bed by. I implore you.
Should be.
All right, pal, take care.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Frank Klose, like all guests, appear via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.